Hey everybody, welcome back to Cooking with Grandmommy. We're going to make something sweet and yummy today. Remember, at Grandmommy's house, food is all about love and everybody's welcome. Now the recipe we're going to make today, chocolate chip cookies, it's just the plain Nestle Toll House recipe. But there's so many fun things you can do with it. Today I'm going to make it in the pan cookie, so all you do is cut it up into bars. And then there's other things that you can do as well. I use it when I'm making a cookie cake. I'll take part of the dough and put it in on a round pizza pan. So then I can use that portion to decorate and write happy birthday on. I am not a cake decorator, but you know, grandmommies can figure out how to do a lot of things pretty good for their grandkids. So when I put the dough on a pizza pan to make the round cookie cake, then I have enough batter left to make like, probably 2 dozen, maybe 2.5 dozen cookies. I just scoop it out on the pan because it doesn't take a full batch if you use the pizza pan. But anyway, let's get started with the full recipe. And we start out with one of my favorite things, butter. 1 cup of butter, which is 2 sticks. And I've had these out so that they have warmed up to room temperature. So we put in 1 cup of butter, and then we use 3/4 cup of brown sugar and 3/4 cup of white sugar. So all that goes in. And then we're going to mix this because we want these 2 things to be creamed together really well before we add anything else. And that's going to make your cookies bake up better to have this real creamy. So I'm going to turn on my mixer and I'll be back in a minute. I have been creaming the 3/4 cup brown sugar, 3/4 cup white sugar, and 2 sticks of butter. And this is how it's looking right now. Nice and creamy, light color. And I'm going to add in now 2 eggs and a teaspoon of vanilla flavoring. Remember, this is the recipe right on the back of the bag of Nestle Toll House chocolate chips. You know, I'm thinking chocolate chip cookies are probably the #1 favorite cookie of everybody all around the world. At least in America. Alright, we're just going to let that blend stir up. Alright, I stirred in 2 eggs and a teaspoon of vanilla flavoring. And now I'm going to add the dry things. I've got a teaspoon of soda, a teaspoon of salt, and 2 1/4 cups of flour. In it goes. Start slow, remember, so you don't throw flour all over yourself in the kitchen. I usually do that with powdered sugar. So, just going to slowly stir this in till it's all mixed up. And then the best part comes, the chocolate chips. I know a lot of people like eating cookie dough. That's never been my thing. But I know it's a big popular thing and the grandkids like it, but I'll stick to the baked cookies. Alright, so the flour is just stirred in. Now I'm going to throw in the 2 cups of chocolate chips. And just take a minute to let those mix up. So we're going to do the pan cookie variety today. So I'm just going to put it in this 15 by 10 inch pan. And sometimes this is easier to bake than the scooped out because it's a little tricky sometimes baking chocolate chip cookies. One thing you always have to remember is that the chocolate in the cookies is very hot. So you want to take these out before they look completely done because the chocolate's going to keep baking that cookie for a couple minutes after you get it out of the oven. So just remember that. Don't take them out when they look completely done inside the oven or they're going to get too crispy and too brown because that chocolate's going to keep baking. So I'm going to take all my dough, dump it out into the pan. When you cut this pan of cookies into bars, it will make about 4 dozen or 48 cookies. Of course, that also depends on what size you cut out, how large you like to have your cookies. Pizza cutter is a very convenient way to cut up your cookies also. They have a nice sharp blade on them. Alright, there's all the dough. You can use a spatula. I like using my inverted knife frosting knife, it's also known as. And just press it down, push it into the corners. See, this would be the perfect time if I like cookie dough to lick my fingers, but I don't like it. So, it's going to stay right there. Press it into the corners and up to the edges. I've got my oven preheating to 375. Now if you needed a large cookie cake for a birthday, you could just decorate it in this pan right here. I just usually end up making a round one in the pizza pan. But either way will work. Be creative. Cooking and baking is kind of creative. You start with all these different things and then end up with something delicious. I also sprayed my pan with some cooking spray before putting in the batter, the dough. Alright, it looks pretty evenly spread around here. Give it a little smoothing out. Growing up, this was my son's favorite cookie. Get all that good dough off there. Let's put it in the pan somewhere. Alright, so my oven's heated to 375. I'm going to put this in for 20 minutes and then we'll be back and see how it turned out. Alright, man, is this smelling good in this kitchen now? Warm chocolate chip cookies. All in a pan, pan cookies. So, the recipe says to bake these for 20 minutes. I always crank it back and check it. So I set my timer for 17 and you can see that they're good and brown on the edges. I think next time I'll probably start at 16 minutes, maybe even 15. Because this is going to keep baking for a couple minutes because all those chocolate chips are so hot. So anyway, when you cut these into squares, you can have up to 48 cookies, again depending on how large you want your pieces to be. From here, you could have a cookie cake. From here, you could put the whole pan in the freezer if you're baking ahead for something. These were always a #1 seller at the church bake sales. So if you're baking up for a bake sale, you could freeze them up, cut them up when you're ready to go. Or maybe you just want to eat half now and half later. But it's a very versatile, easy to use recipe and something that everybody likes. So, thanks for joining me again on Cooking with Grandmommy. Remember, at Grandmommy's house, food is always about love and everybody's welcome, old to young. See you later.